Hi there, David here, and in this video we'll be doing a redesign of a short clip I took from the video game Super Mario Odyssey. Alright, so what we'll be doing in this video is having a listen to the original game audio and comparing it to the redesign, and then I'll be going over layer by layer how I created all of the sounds for my redesign here, and then what plugins I use, how I process them, mixed, and everything. So stick around because we're going to be going over that shortly. But if you're new here, I have a gift for you. It is my Sound Designer starter pack. It's a sound pack I put together of various different sounds. There's over 900 sounds, like monster sounds, magic sounds, spell sounds, impacts, whooshes, a whole bunch of different stuff in there. So if you want to grab it, it's free. Link will be in the description, and you can use it for any personal or commercial projects. All right, let's get into our project. All right, so here we are inside of Reaper, and like I said, let's have a listen to the original game audio, and then we'll do the redesign. So this is the original game audio. All right, and now let's have a listen to the redesign. All right, so that was the redesign. A few things that you might have noticed if you paid really close attention. One is that, of course, I was using the original like Super Mario sound. I just kind of cut it from the original and then put it in my redesign just because I didn't want to try to even replicate that. Obviously, I'm not the right person to be able to do that kind of voice. So yeah, so that's one thing. Of course, there was no music, so that was the other thing. So all right, so let's just start right at the beginning with the footsteps. So let's have a listen to the original here just to have a reference here, and then we'll go over my redesign here. So those are the footsteps, and this was probably the hardest part of this redesign, at least for me. I had a really hard time getting it exactly how I want it to sound, but let's have a listen and see if I got somewhat close to the original. So this is it right here for my sound. And the way that I created that, these here. So I had kind of two components to the sound that I was trying to replicate. One is kind of like the noisy bass of the sound, and the other one was more like the clicky tonal sound. So yeah, so this first layer here is the actual noise base of the sound. So if you see here, I'm using Faceplant. So what I have here is a noise generator. I have the slope set all the way up here, and I'm seed here set to random, so that what it does is, if I'm not mistaken, every time you kind of play a note, it kind of chooses a different part of the wave here to start at a different part of the wave, so it kind of never sounds the exact same. That's all that's happening there. I don't think this pitch shifter is doing anything. Yeah, I think I was just kind of experimenting with that. I really cut out the lows. I just didn't need them. So if we listen without, right, it's just you get this really big, heavy sound, which doesn't make any sense for this in this context. Then the other thing is I try to just carve out some of the sounds to make out some of the frequencies that I wanted. So if we listen to that. So a bit of the highs here. If we look at the actual curve, in the original, there was kind of this like clickiness to the sound in the high end. And then, of course, I just cut out a lot of the mids and the lows because I just didn't need that. So that is that. And if you see here, what I'm playing in terms of like MIDI here, I mean, it doesn't matter which note you play anywhere on your keyboard that I'm playing. It's all the same sounds. But that is how I trigger these sounds here. Okay, so that is the first layer. That's like your noise layer for the footsteps. The next layer was this one right here. So let's have a listen to how I created that here. Let's have a look. So this is it here. And the way that I made this is so this is what I call my sampling sound design files. It's just a long file that I exported from like a bunch of design sounds that I was, experimenting with. This is kind of the sound that I got. So I basically brought the sustain all the way down. Decay is set to around 136. So I had a random modulation applied to the sample and hold, and then the sample and hold is applied to pitch. And it's not by very much. You can see here's 1.33. So it's just so that it randomizes the pitch a little bit. So every time I play a note, you get a random pitch. Right, so it's kind of acting in the same behavioral manner as the noise sample here. So every time I place a note, it's always going to be a slightly different pitch. Okay, and then so that's how I did that. Let's take these off here. So if we can listen. Yeah, one other thing that's kind of deceptive about the sound, and I'm not sure how I can show this without like messing up the whole project, but what I was experimenting with is Morph plugin. So I have Morph here, and I was experimenting with this layer here, which I didn't end up using in the redesign, and I was sending this layer into the Morph here, and I was able to get like this clicky sound using that. So using entropy EQ, boosting some of the sounds here, and proximity effect here. So basically just doing this processing here, what I was trying to do is basically get this clicky sound. So I don't think I can replicate it easily without messing up everything. But basically, if we play just this, the way I'm getting the sound is because I'm sending this signal into this track here, if I'm not mistaken. So that's how I'm getting the sound to come out here. Okay, anyways, so I'll keep going here, just kind of explaining how I shaped the sound once it was going through the morph plugin. Basically boost the mids, some of the highs, added an EQ to cut out all the lows just because I didn't want any bassiness to it. Recenter to center the sound, and then a bit of the gain to balance the sound. Right, and that's how I got this clicky sound here. But if I take this off, you can see here, I'm actually not getting any sound. And the reason for that is because this here, actually, for this track, I'm not sending this track to the master bus, as you can see here. What I'm doing is I'm sending the audio from this track into this, this Faceplant V2 track, and that's where I'm getting the sound from. So this signal here from this chain, I'm sending it into here, and then it's going through this signal chain. And what's really making the difference is M-morph. So if I take that off, right, you can't hear anything. So like really it's M-morph here that's making all the difference in the sound here. That's how I was able to get this clicky sound. I'm not sure I can replicate that. Anyways, I'm sorry it's kind of confusing for this video, but that's I was kind of experimenting and I kind of fell on this in that way. So I'm not sure how to replicate it or show it properly without messing up everything, but that's the clicky sound. So altogether now with the 2 layers, this is what you get. So it's very subtle. I could probably even like, bring up this click even more. I could maybe turn that off. It's just kind of adding a bit of character to the footsteps, but that's it. Anyways, that is the footsteps. Let's move on to the next sound here. So let's do the jump. So when Mario jumps here, we have this sound happening. And this is an interesting one. It's basically just a noise sweep with a filter, like a filter sweep through a noise file. So let's see what I did here. So here I have, again, inside Faceplant, I loaded a noise generator, set the slope halfway, C to stable. And here's my filter. I have my filter up here. And the way that I'm sweeping it is with this LFO here. So if you look at this LFO, this is the shape of the LFO that I used that was kind of as close I could get it to the original. Okay, so and then I assign that to the cutoff here. And then basically all I added here was a detune, an ensemble effect. So this is the without the ensemble. With it, very minor, like very late effect. Just adding a bit of width. And then what's cool is that I added this note modulator here, and I'm assigning that to the cutoff here so that I can play across my keyboard, and it's gonna do it's gonna move basically the cutoff of the filter. So if I want a low sweep, I just play low on my keyboard. Right, so with this, now I can kind of like play on my keyboard to kind of get in the right range without having to like get the exact perfect like cutoff location. Plus I have just more flexibility in how I want to approach this. So that's how I created this noise sweeps. And what I did is I just exported 2 different like versions of it. So this is one, and I have another one here. Right, so this second one here, I just added this preset from M-Transformer, and it's just making it a little bit different. Right, it's not as clean or smooth. It makes it a bit more distorted. That's what I was going for. So if we listen to the original here, it kind of sounds like there's a bit of like wobbling or distortion or something like that. So that's what I was kind of going for. It's not perfect, but it's kind of close. And then, so what I did here, I'm just going to show the group plugins here. Just gain to lower the volume, recenter to keep it as mono as possible, right in the center of the field. And then I added a manipulator here. And I'm adding a bit of an alternator, and I brought down the mix to 47%. So if I take it off, right, it adds a bit more of that wobble or warble to the sound that you kind of have in the original here. So that's what I was going for here. So and that's how I created these sounds. So I just created 2 of them, put them on here, and that's it. All right, let's go over the landing sound when he lands on the ground here. So this is my redesign part here. All right, so there's quite a few layers for this one. So let's start here right at the top here, this one. So this is your tonal sound. So if I take this off, like you're really missing the tone to it. And this is a big part of the original as well. If we listen here, you have this doom, and that's that sound. Right, and the way that I created that is right here. I use Faceplant again. So I'm using here a sine wave. And I'm applying this LFO here to the pitch. So this LFO here is being applied to the pitch. It's not very much, but it's just adding a bit of an attack to the sound by pitch shifting the sound here. I also have this LFO here being put onto this distortion. So it's basically emphasizing the transient a lot. What I was trying to do here is just emphasize the transient. So if I take these off, it's okay, but with it on, it's just the transient is just a bit more emphasized here. Same thing with this one. Yeah, so this one is also being applied to here, the ring modulation and the pitch as well. So with all of these off, you have this sound with it on, right? So it's just really emphasizing that transient and making it a bit more bouncy. So that's what that is doing. So you'll see here, everything's moving pretty quickly because it's just hitting the transient. And then of course I have a transient shaper here to bring up the attack and the pump a little bit so that you have this little dip in the sound. Okay, so that's how I created this sound here. And then of course I can play across my keyboard, and basically I was just playing until I got the right pitch from the original here. And that's how I created that. So just to bring out some of the other sounds here, I added some plugins. So this is the sound without the plugins. First I added uber loud, just to bring up a bit more of the sound here, putting in a bit of compression and saturation. Next I have a gain just to bring down the volume because it was way too loud. And of course I had another transient shaper. This is just to bring out some of the tail of the sound. Because personally I found it was like dying a little too fast, so I brought that up. And you'll see here, like for the actual sound itself, I'm using the sustain all the way down, and then the decay I brought it to about 400. That's how I created the envelope of the sound here. All right, so that's the tonal part, probably one of the most important layers in this sound effect. So let's keep going here with this layer. So I have these 3 whooshes. And these are just exactly that. They're just whooshes. They're items I swung around in front of my microphones. And if we look at them, like some of these, I put uber loud just to push up the volume a little bit and recenter to keep everything in the center. But that's about it. I don't think any of these really have much. Yeah, they don't have a lot of processing or any processing on the bottom 2 here layers. So those are the swings. So far we have this here. Close. We're getting somewhere. All right, for this last sound here, we have this here. And the way that this was created was in combination with these files down here, which are my noise files. So what I did is I used a transmutator here to blend the 2 sounds together. So I'm going to go over the 2 sounds separately, because if I take this off here, right, this is the sound that I created. So the way that I created this specific file here is I used a swing sound, like just stuff I swung from my microphone. And I basically played notes really quickly on the higher end of my keyboard. So I have this. That's the pattern I played on. And then I printed it out. So I have it printed out for each of these. So this is the sound here. Okay. So that's how I came up with the sound. Then I added a few things here. Uber loud to bring out a lot of the body of the sound. So if we listen with it off, with it on. I also have Spectre here just to bring up a lot of the high end. I have transmutator. I will go over this after because that's really in conjunction with this bottom part here. So I'll keep that off for now. Then I have a transient shaper just to bring up a bit more of the transients, and track spacer. This is to blend it with the noise if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so now, yeah, I'm going to leave transmutator off here for now. I'm going to go down here now and listen to this file because this is playing with this layer here, and I'm kind of blending the 2 together. So let's have a listen. All right, so this is the noise sounds here. Just gonna mute this one. So these are just noise sound files that I created. So the way that I created these is inside of Faceplant, I just had a noise generator and I printed out a sound with an attack and like a short release. That's what I did here. And they just had pitched them at different pitches like that. And basically I lined them up with these 3 like swings up here. Okay, so that's how I created this. I'm just gonna turn it back off here. So I'm not sending this to the master, so you're not actually going to hear this because I'm sending it into here, into transmutator. And what I'm doing here is kind of blending this layer with these noise sounds. And it's very, very light. So if you listen, like if it was dry and wet, I just basically wanted to have a bit of that swing sound with some noise in it. So that's what I'm doing there. It's very, very light, but I just wanted to show that because it is in there. All right, so that's how I created these this jumping sound. All right, so let's have a look at what we have so far. All right, so next we have the moon here. I put star, but it's actually a moon. But anyway, so let's have a listen to this first moon, what I call the moon pop, which is when it comes out of the ground. So that's the sound I created. Let's have a listen to this one. So this is a layer I created using my design sampling files. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link to the video of how I created these. But basically, I imported these long design files, put them into a sampler. Usually it's like inside of Faceplant for myself. And then I kind of scan through the file until I find sounds that I really like. And then I export those. So that's how I created this layer here. And I just dragged it and dropped it in here. So yeah, I kind of just dragged and dropped the sound in here. But what I did do is add a bit of uber loud. So let's have a listen. Right, just bring it up the volume a little bit. And then this second layer, same idea here. It's just a different sound that I created. So when I put them together, this is what I get. And I just added a bit of an EQ here just to cut out some of the low. So without it, very bassy with it. So that's the star popping out of the ground. Next, I have the star. Again, I'm saying star, but it's actually a moon. Star glitter here. So let's have a look at how I created that. So I have two layers here. So I'm just going to start with the first one. This is the the higher frequency layer where it's all the where all the glitter is. And here's where you can see these sampling sound design files. So I have this long file here, and basically what I'm doing is I just shaped the envelope the way that I wanted. So I brought the sustain all the way down to keys at 234. So now I can scan through here. Right, until I get a sound that I want. I'm going to go back to the original. But yeah, and all I did here is I have this, and now I can play chords. And I can get these nice sounds. And what I did here is I'm just adding two things, which is a delay and then a transient shaper. So without it sounds like this. With the delay, now it adds a bit more tail and glitter to the sound. Right, so I'm bringing the duck here up a little bit just so that I still get the main sound in front in focus, and then so it's ducking the delay. And then I brought the mix down quite low as well. Right, it's just more to feel it and have a tail. And then of course you have your transient here just to make it a bit more punchy. Right, and that's how I created the sound. So if we listen here again, and in case you're just curious what notes I played here, it's basically just an A flat chord with a 6 in there, 6, 7. All right, the next layer is this one here. This is the body of the sound. So let's have a look at this one. If you look here, again, same idea. I think I had a different file in here. Again, same exact delay and transient preset that I had before. I think I just copy and pasted the exact Faceplant preset that I had. And all I did is I added, brought in a new file, I think. And then also this EQ here that I brought up some of these peaks here in the EQ, just to let it ring a bit more, makes it sound a bit more bell-like. So that's what I did here. And I think originally I had it like this. And then I could kind of sweep through it till I got a ringing sound that I like. So that's how I created that. But yeah, it's the exact same thing as the first one here. And I just kind of put these together. This one I played an octave lower, if I'm not mistaken. So together now they sound like this. You get this nice sound. So together now with this pop. Perfect. Here you'll also notice for this sound, I have track spacer because I want the pop to come out first. And because it's such a short sound, I don't want it to, I want the pop to stand out before this run comes in. So that's what this track spacer is doing. It's basically removing the masking from this so I can hear the pop. And then of course I have M transformer here, which is adding a bit of pitch shifting. So I pitch shifted it up. So without it sounds like this. And with it. Makes it a little bit brighter, right? So that's how I created that sound effect. All right, the last sound effect here that I created is this moon sound. When he actually jumps to get the moon, it sounds like this. And here, if I'm not mistaken, I've used a very similar technique as what I did before with my sampling design files. Here, I used a longer decay time and also a release time so that I get more of the sound from the file. I have a delay here again and a bit of a reverb. So if I take this off and with it on, right? So that's how I created that. I basically printed it out. I'm not sure what notes I was using. I think it's just I was using two notes, which was E flat, A flat, and that's how I created that. And then I just printed it out. I added more delay on top of that here, as you can see, right? And then I just did another printout of this one. So two different sounds. This one's more high frequency, and then this one. But they were both created using a similar technique, as you can see here. Again, I'm using a different sound file here, but same idea as before. And then just using uber loud to just to push up the sound a bit. So together now we have this. All right, the last sound here that I have is my ambience. So in the original, he's kind of like in this desert here. So you have this kind of wind blowing around. And I was trying to replicate that myself. So here I have a recording I did at my house, actually, on a windy day. So this is this. Let's turn it off. This is the original recording here. Right, so that is the recording. I'm going to take all of these off, and let's go one by one how I created this. So first thing is just bringing down the gain because it's kind of loud. Right, next thing is track spacer. This is to cut out the ambience from all the other sound effects, as I always want the sound effects to be cutting through. So it's ducking the ambience. Every time there's a sound effect down here that's playing, it's cutting out some of the ambience. And it's very light. It's not very much. Like if you see here, it's only at 8%. And also have a long release time so that it's very smooth and kind of seamless. So that's what's happening there. Next here, I have an EQ, and this is changing up a lot of the sound. So with it off, my sound is like this. On. And the thing that's really shaping the sound, obviously, is this bell here is making this the wind a lot darker. And then you have also this peak here at my peak number 3 here. Right, that is the sound, or that to me it sounded very similar to the wind noise here. So you kind of have this like filter peak here, and that's what I was trying to replicate here. So that is what this EQ here is doing. I was trying to replicate this filter peak. All right, next we have M transformer. This is I did a bit of frequency shifting. Just a little bit, and then probably didn't need it, but I did a bit and left it there. Next, I have Spectre, and this is just add a bit of saturation. Again, a bit of at these peaks just to bring out, make it feel more filtered. Right, so here you can hear there's the tone that's coming out here, and again, it helps to sell the kind of the wind sound. Again, very minor, small detail, but it's there and it's helping. And then lastly is just, again, another gain just to help balance out the sound again. So here's the original. Now it's transformed into this. All right, and with that, we've gone through all of our sound effects. So one more time, let's go through from the beginning here. I'll go over the original game audio, and then when we go back, have a listen to all the elements that we talked about. Have a listen to all the sounds. See if you can pick out layers that we talked about, and yeah, we'll go from there. All right, I hope you found that useful and valuable. If you have any questions or comments, of course, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And just a reminder to grab that Sound Designer starter pack that I have for you. It's absolutely free in the description. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.